Alright, I just want to elaborate on something here. I just want to make a point. Now, it seems ridiculous to think that dolphins exist now because they literally lost their legs and went back to the ocean. Okay? Now, that sounds ridiculous. We know we came from the oceans. Okay? So why would an animal evolve to go into the ocean? Okay? Now, whenever you have a species, say like an amphibian, a mammal, a reptile, amphibians can alter their genome when it comes to genders and stuff like that, okay, for survival. Alright, now, they can be a male and female when it comes down to it. Mammals don't change species. When you're a mammal, you're a fucking mammal, alright? You don't change into a reptile or an amphibian or some other animal, like a crustacean or an invertebrate. You don't change into a completely different species, alright? So it seems more like, since we did come from the oceans, alright, that's where the life formed first, okay, that dolphins or whales, dolphins and whales, evolved into land dwellers, alright? Now, say it's already okay, so we have the evolution of a dolphin, okay, from primordial animals that turns into a porpoise or dolphin. Whales. Now, whales have legs, okay, but they don't use them. They're like little nubs. And they think, well, that's because they lost their legs and went into the ocean. No, this is actually them growing to adapt to the land, okay? It's not them losing the legs going to the ocean. It's actually them adapting to go to the land. This is an intermediate change between the walrus or a seal, which is the lizard or the fish that grows or walks on land, like everybody's always, oh yeah, a fish walked on land. I mean, it's called a walrus or a seal. This is the change in between, that where it finally goes from one to the other. Then it evolves into a hippopotamus. Now, a hippopotamus is an amphibian, okay? It's actually a mammal, but it's an amphibian because it lives in the water. This is another intermediate change in between, okay? So whenever we end up evolving, once it's a mammal, it evolves from a mammal in the water to a mammal to the land. And then we have, obviously, you have the large animals, like horse, elephants, giraffes, antelope. This would be like the megafauna. And, you know, the tail on a pig is like a little curly nub-like, alright? This is the change where literally we don't need the tail anymore. You know, this is where the tail is starting to wither away because we don't need it. And eventually this will change into what is man. So we're all related. Everything on this planet is related. And it doesn't have to do with something out from somewhere else having to come in here. Now, I'm sure that we were engineered, alright? If we weren't engineered, again after an extinction, then we evolved. I mean, just evolved straight from the stuff that's on the planet. You know, there was no alien interactions and all of this stuff. But the only alien interaction, I believe, were humans. And the aliens that we're experiencing, talk about and all that are actually humans. Okay, because humans have had intelligence for thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. Okay, a minimum of at least 60,000 years. So, we've left this planet. I mean, I guarantee we've left this planet. We've figured stuff out before, yada, yada, yada. And we've had to replant life on this planet, humans, because of some extinction event. So they literally had to force evolve us. Because life does not evolve unless the cells are stressed. Okay? If you want to evolve, you want to force evolve something, you're going to have to cause cellular stress. That way, it changes to survive. It adapts. Okay? It's called adaptation. So anytime any kind of extinction event happened, that's when the animals evolved. Everything is fine if everything is, you know, in a consistency. But once something drastic happens, something drastic has to happen to the life to be able to adapt. And when you consider the ribs, when it comes to mammals, we all have roughly the same amount of ribs. Especially when it comes to dolphins and humans, or whales and humans. See, it makes more sense that we evolved from dolphins or mammals from the ocean and came to the land, and a transitional state from coming to the water to the land was the walrus or the seal. And eventually that evolved into some other in-betweens that we can't find fossils for, and eventually the hippopotamus came about. And it's ironic that a hippopotamus and a walrus have roughly the same kind of face. Their faces look a lot alike. And their tusks. They even have tusks. Both of them. You know? So it makes more sense that the fish that walked on the land, at first I figured it might have been an amphibian. It had to be an amphibian until I started doing some more research and dug a little bit deeper and figured this stuff out. Okay? So it seems like anything that evolved on the land from amphibians, say, there's only 3 amphibians on the planet. I mentioned this in a video. There's only really 3 amphibians. All right, there's a bunch of species of amphibians, you know, but all of those different species are basically 3. Okay, there's a newt, a frog, and a cicalian, or Sicilian. So these 3 things eventually became an array of other amphibians and evolved into reptiles. Now, an amphibian and a reptile are very closely related, though one is born in the water and doesn't necessarily lay eggs like a reptile does. But this is a transitional state that animals will literally go through for survival instincts or survive. It's just nature. It's natural. It's natural selection. Now people want to say, "Oh well, if you believe in evolution, you don't believe in God." Look, if you believe in God, you'd have to understand that God is smart enough, or that nature is smart enough to understand how to use evolution to create animals that can adapt and survive on planets. If there was no adaptation, the animal would not survive. So you have to consider, if you believe in God, you'd have to believe that evolution is a tool that God uses. Okay? And God is not like some kind of, I'm not even going to get into all that. I'm not even going to get to it. I'm just saying, pantheists are the closest to understanding what God really is. I'm just going to throw that out there. Because nature, alpha and omega, is God. And alpha is a nucleus. That's protons and neutrons. Omega, that is electrons. So that's atoms. Lo and behold, Adam and Eve, you know. Like, example. There's the Adam and there's the Eve. Okay? That's the egg. That's the cell. That's the sperm. That's the egg. That's what all life does. All life does the exact same thing on different scales. That's it. There's a big picture that scientists do not see, and I don't understand how they can't see this. It's so easy, but you have to understand that all these religions are all saying the same thing. If you dig into them, scientists don't believe in all that, so they're not going to look into it, but they need that philosophy. You need the science and the philosophy, or you're not going to have both. This is the science, this is the male side of thinking, this is the philosophy, this is the female way of thinking. You're using your brain here, you're using your heart here. There's a balance here. You need both. You need the X and Y factors. The Y factor is the male factor. That's, like I said, the brain, the science. Women tend to use their emotions and think more with their heart. See, that is the female side. That's the X factor. Okay? All of this literally ties into science. And if you have been watching any of my videos, you'll understand what I'm saying exactly. And you'll understand exactly where all the physics and the paradoxes that we have in physics are coming into play, and how this can answer those, and how it does answer a lot of them. But if you actually don't know any of this stuff, kind of take what I'm saying into consideration and do a little research on your own, and you'll find out that all of this is a fact. It's all real stuff that we already know. I'm not adding anything. I'm just deciphering what we already have.